there is evidence against general use of nutrient supplements for cancer prevention. The reason is that results from supplements are mixed. Okay, so there are at times benefits. For example, folate can facilitate DNA repair. And yet what's interesting is that some of the first successful chemotherapeutics, they were antifolates. And so this nutrient, isolated nutrient, can help, but also can harm. Likewise with vitamin D, could be a supplement for those that are not getting enough sun in the winter, for example. But generally, health professionals should advise natural diet rather than supplements. There is chemoprevention, especially useful for those at risk, but there are some general ones. I mentioned about the use of aspirin and anti-inflammatories. Okay, there's also a DFMO. Metformin is there. However, it's important to know that preconception paternal use of metformin was found to be associated with birth defects, 40% increase in birth defects, especially male genital birth defects. All right, over 3 times the risk. So men should not be using metformin if they're planning on having a baby. Should be starting metformin after having the last child. Contraceptives may decrease risk of endometrial and ovarian cancer. Oral contraceptives or estrogen therapy delivering estrogen alone may increase endometrial cancer risk, whereas simultaneous delivery of estrogen and progestin or progesterone decreases risk. There's a more consistent effect, around 22% reduction on ovarian cancer risk. So to be clear, oral contraceptives may decrease risk. But like I said, if it's just the estrogen alone, it could increase risk. Okay, so be careful with that point. And next, there's these androgen receptors and aromatase inhibitors. I'm going to name a few. Tamoxifen can reduce breast cancer risk. Raloxifene is slightly less effective than tamoxifen, but it confers lower risk of thromboembolic events and does not increase incidence of endometrial cancer. And this point is important to mention because tamoxifen does increase risk of endometrial cancer. Another is lisofloxacin, which reduces breast cancer incidence by 79% with a dose of 0.5 milligrams per day. Another alternative to tamoxifen is arzoxifene, which could reduce breast cancer by 58%, whereas tamoxifen perhaps only reduced it by 33%, according to studies studied by Kurzik and colleagues. Now, the aromatase inhibitors such as anastrozole, letrozole, exemestane, they are also more effective than tamoxifen for reducing breast cancer risk in postmenopausal women. And they do not increase risk of endometrial cancer or thromboembolism, but they do increase risk of fractures. Raloxifene is FDA approved for prevention of invasive breast cancer in high-risk women post-menopause or with osteoporosis at a dose of 60 milligrams per day. According to William and colleagues in 2017. Using aromatase inhibitors, ER-positive breast cancer was prevented in high-risk individuals. 25 milligrams per day of exemestane conferred 65% reduction in incidence of invasive breast cancer 1 milligram per day of anastrozole conferred 53% reduction. Okay, so the story begins, Cook explains, with breast cancer prevention trials of tamoxifen, 20 milligrams per day. Unfortunately, endometrial cancer increased by over double. The relative risk of endometrial cancer increased. When the dosage was increased up to 40, from 20 to 40 of tamoxifen, endometrial cancer relative risk was over 3 times. And this is why we could use raloxifene instead, in which case the endometrial cancer risk is approximately 40% lower. It's important to note that tamoxifen and raloxifene may reduce breast cancer risk by 45%, according to Hoover and colleagues in 2018. But they do entail adverse effects, and so patients need to understand the potential harms that come with these preventative therapies. Moving on to statins. There was a reduced incidence of low risk and localized tumors among statin users. According to Alphakin and colleagues in 2017, the research data does show a reduced cancer risk thanks to statin use. And there's also an improved prostate cancer specific survival, particularly in men undergoing radiotherapy. And this shows that statins are useful in secondary as well as tertiary prevention. Statins are becoming common because they are also used for lowering the risk of cardiovascular disease. And so they're recommended by the US Preventative Task Force. Statins were shown to reduce all-cause and cancer-related mortality by 20%. And there's consistent reports about reducing breast cancer incidence as well. Next, health professionals should advise a healthy diet high in polyphenols associated with reduced risk of cancer. The cancer prevention diet may include colorful fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables may decrease risk of breast, lung, gastric, esophageal, and colorectal cancer. In fact, the large European prospective investigation into cancer, EPIC, involving over 500,000 men and women, reported a 13% reduction in colon cancer risk for every 10 grams increase in dietary fiber derived from cereals, fruit, or vegetables. The diet should include berries, soy, ginger, green tea, garlic, onions, leeks, fish, walnuts, seeds, peanuts. These are healthy sources of omega-3. Good, healthy fat, all right? Different from that animal carcinogenic fat we just talked about. Next are spices, spice of life, cinnamon, clove, herbs such as basil, cilantro, cumin, fennel, mint, oregano, parsley, rosemary, thyme, algae, mushrooms, olive oil, whole grain, and yogurt. So going through a few of these, fish, nuts, and seeds, they may reduce, according to McCullough and colleagues, breast cancer and colorectal cancer. The whole grains might reduce risk of gastric and colorectal cancer. Why are the polyphenols important? Well, I mentioned the harm of nitrates and the possible conversion into harmful N-nitrosyl compounds. Well, the formation of those harmful N-nitrosyl compounds from the nitrates that are also found in greens and root vegetables are blocked by polyphenols such as ascorbic acid. Another interesting thing was found is that plant microRNAs that play a role in our own body, when they're consumed, they have tumor suppressor properties. Tomato is another one. It has polyphenol carotenoid lycopene associated with lower risk of prostate cancer in particular, among other forms of cancer. Turmeric is anti-inflammatory, and it can be very effective when combined with piperine, which is found together in the mixture known as curry. In fact, it's been reported that it's 1,000-fold as strong. This is a positive synergy, indicating wisdom in traditional cooking. Interestingly, or sadly, phytochemicals reduce and even disappear with processing and preparation. And so here's an example. We see the 199 milligrams of phytochemicals present in soy flour. When roasted, are reduced to 128. When boiled, are reduced to 55. In tofu, it's down to 28. In soy milk, 9. In soy sauce, 1.7 milligrams of phytochemicals are left. In soy oil, which is highly processed, 0 milligrams. There's no phytochemicals left after all that processing. Okay, so that's why the processing was discouraged. And this fresh, healthy, natural products encouraged.